Welcome back, everybody, to the next episode of the Moa Noah podcast, where I get into a very nice interview with a great, what I can now call old friend of mine, Josh, my
Ooh.
Swedish wolf, I guess I could call him. We met through the Wim Hof method a few years ago, and I think I'll just say to start this off, welcome to the podcast, and thanks for being my first digital guest. I'm glad we're going to iron out those wrinkles together.
Yeah, thank you, brother. So nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. This podcast is actually it was very spontaneous. A friend of mine like convinced me to start doing it, and it's actually really nice because I'm reaching out to people who I haven't seen in a while, talked to in a while, people I find super interesting that I would like to have in my life more often. But as life is, it's very crazy and we all have a lot of things to do.
Hmm.
But it's nice that we can sit down and chat for, what is it, 20 to 40 minutes and dig
Right.
in. So, how are
Yes.
you?
I am fantastic. I'm great.
That's
I'm
really nice to hear.
very happy.
Where are you right now?
I'm in a place called Jämtland. It's where the reindeers are in Sweden. So we have reindeers running outside.
No
And
way.
well, no, not quite, but yeah, you meet them out when you're on your ski touring yesterday and met some reindeers, and yeah, it's up north, but in actually geographically wise, it's in the middle of Sweden. So there's Sweden is very long. So,
Yeah.
but population wise, I'm very north.
Okay. And
Yeah.
is it further north than when we went a few years ago?
No, that was more north. Yeah,
Okay, cool. We're gonna get
yeah.
into that as well. I'm really excited to talk about that, but I would like to chat just to hit some background a bit on how we met. I think
Do it.
well, was it the master module or was it the second level, the level two? I think it was the master module.
Yeah, like I also there's very few people I actually remember from the first one. Like I've met some people and they're like, "Oh, hey Josh, we were in the first one together." I was like, "Oh, really? Yeah, sorry, I don't remember that."
Just for
But yeah,
background, we're talking about our Wim Hof Method Master Module certification, where we meet up in Poland to
yeah,
make sure everybody's been on top of their SHIT.
yeah. Ooh, the nerves.
Yeah. Um, was that, I guess, how did you get into the Wim Hof Method? And then we can kind of transition to how we met when we were there.
I mean, I find that question, how do I get into things, pretty hard because it's so many things that you go through in life like spin you on new paths and just like evolving. Like, what's the first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah.
Um, like I had a pretty alternative upbringing, which maybe was the result why I found myself coming into the Wim Hof method in the end. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, I had been through a period in my life where I had gone through a lot of personal challenges and in relationships and health and like just life not working out for me. And so yeah, I tried to find some kind of solution, I guess, to feel better and to be better and to just feel more power, a sense of power, I think. Like I felt very powerless at that time. And that's how I stumbled across it. I was actually surfing in Sweden with a friend. We go cold water surfing in the winter, so we were walking through like a meter of snow from the car to get to the water.
Oh
And
my
my friend
God.
said, "Hey, I know this like breathing method. It's like with Wim Hof guy." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, whatever. We'll try it out, but I want to go surfing, you know?" And then he, and then we did it in the car, and yeah, at that moment I was like, "Whoa," you know. And then that kind of sparked just something that simple, just that feeling doing the breath work sparked something inside me that made me curious about more. And
Yeah.
that's kind of when I started doing more cold exposure and other things as well. I was like, okay, this made me feel, and I felt this peace. And so, yeah, the rest is
So
history.
how long had you been? doing the surfing stuff in the winter? Because I've seen obviously outdoor high quality films of guys with their beards frozen and the
Yeah.
half of the waves are slushy. Like,
Yeah.
how long have you been doing that?
I started pretty late, so I'm 35 now,
Yeah.
and I probably started when I was like 20, 28, 29.
Okay. But you
And
had been surfing before that, right? Or did you just start
I
with cold
had
water surfing?
I had tried a few times, like, in Costa Rica and different places, like just trying to get into that feeling of beach dude. But
Yeah.
I always got smashed by the waves, so that never really happened.
Yeah.
And yeah, I met this friend in Sweden. Actually, he's from Australia, and he took me surfing in Sweden, and actually learned to surf in winter in Sweden, and as a 28, 29-year-old. And I
That's
think
cool.
that's pretty cool. Like I
Yeah.
never thought I would learn to surf. Like,
It's
but
so hard. My cousins live in coastal California, and every time I think, starting at 10 years old, we did our first surf class.
yeah,
And I mean, I would ride the whitewash and stand up and call it surfing. I mean, I guess you can call that surfing, but uh, I just would love to be the one able to turn and carve. They make it look so easy in the
yeah,
videos. It's just
yeah,
beautiful to watch. Can you do
yeah.
that?
I can do some turns and some stuff, but I'm definitely not like I've gotten tubed once,
Yeah,
and that's
really.
that's like the
It's the
that's
dream
what
of
like the
all
holy
surfers.
grail of surfing. And like obviously like pros, they get tubed every session. So,
Yeah. Well,
but
because they
like
just know
that,
how to read the waves, I guess, and they find that
yeah.
perfect wave. Yeah.
And they set their whole life up to be in those situations. I mean, I don't my life doesn't revolve around surfing, and that's quite different.
Uh,
So,
yeah. What
but you
is
look like a
your,
surfer.
you do, you do. Your
No,
hair
you
is
do.
I do. Well, oh yeah, the bleach blonde hair. Yeah, I had to get rid of the curly long hair, man. It was just a weight, too much
Yeah,
of it. And I
yeah.
didn't look as majestic Viking warrior as you did. I looked more like a cat that touched an electrical socket.
Looks good. Suits you.
Thank you. Yeah. So I guess because you mentioned what your world revolves around, let's no, before we do that, I want to talk about our trip to Sweden because we had this amazing trip that was huge life moment for me. It was life changing because I experienced some like things that I've never experienced before that that we can talk about in a minute. But as a
Mm.
little background, after we finished our certification, we went in January 2022 or 2023. I can't remember. But we and a friend of ours, Eric, and some of your friends got
Yeah.
together. We flew to Stockholm and then we drove up to Jokkmokk,
Jokkmokk. Yeah.
Jokkmokk. And I just remember um, you telling us, okay, it's probably going to be around -20, -30. And I've never experienced anything like that in my life. So I was like, okay, I got my long underwear, I've got my snow pants, maybe another layer in between. But wait, we're Wim Hof method instructors. We don't need any of that. And I got there super hyped up, and the first thing we did was we drove 12, or had to drive 12 hours, but we weren't going to make it all in one day, right?
Yeah, so we had like a rough schedule and like idea, but I mean, we were really stepping into something unknown for all of us. Like it's the crew, the
Yeah,
adventure, like it was very, but we had this energy behind it, I think. And like yeah, so we drove maybe around, I don't know, 8, 10 hours, yeah. And then we just like, okay, we're gonna stop here.
yeah.
So we
It
just
was,
uh we just stopped in this nice little forest road, and we set up the teepee tent, which is like a canvas. Seen that you've been hosting workshops as well, and
You were the inspiration to buy that. From that trip, I was like, man, I
yes,
need to buy myself one of these teepees. Yeah,
yeah, man. The circular structure, we can talk about that as well. It's
yeah,
such a special environment for gathering, and like it has been for many cultures, gathering
yeah,
in circles. Like if you look at indigenous in many cultures, almost all of them had circular structures for it makes sense, right? You're not sitting facing a flat wall, you're facing each other and you're
yeah,
facing like it's an intention.
yeah,
So yeah, we had one of those. I had been living in one of those over like 2 years with my partner. We had been living and traveling and like using those for our home.
yeah,
So that was kind of just natural for me to bring that and as a
yeah.
space. And yeah, but I didn't really know like what the level of people were and like where we're at. So we just kind of it wasn't that cold that night, maybe -10, which for many people is probably pretty cold. But for us it's like
Yeah. For us,
easy
it's another
cheesy.
day in the office. But at that point, I had never done a winter camping experience in my life.
Yeah.
And so we went, it was -10. We set up the tent. You cooked this piece of meat on like a little sheet metal over a fire. And I was like, man, this is what it's all about. It felt so great. Uh,
Mm.
until we went to sleep, and I, for some reason, I guess it was the inexperience in me, decided to sleep next to the oven,
Mm.
which is fabulous, but the oven goes out every 30 to 40 minutes. And
Yeah.
I don't know about y'all, but I didn't have the best sleeping bag, but I was laying next to the oven. It was roasting in there. Like I think -10 outside, we had maybe 15 degrees when it was at its peak, 20 degrees. So really perfect sleeping temperatures. But then like the 30-minute mark hit, and then within like felt like 10 minutes, the temperature would drop in the tent really quickly. But at that point, you're already asleep. And so I was sleeping next to the oven, and I was sweating my ass off. And so I had I took my sleeping bag off. I think I took my shirt off, and then I fell asleep. And then I wake up like shivering my ass off, and everyone's sound asleep. And I'm like, oh man, I gotta keep everybody warm. So I put the wood back in the fire, and
Yeah.
I closed it up, and then it like covered myself up, and then the teepee would heat up again, and then it was just this perfect circle of events all night long.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
my learning experience from that was to one, maybe don't even sleep with an oven, like just have really good just have really good sleeping bag and stuff to sleep with so that you're warm enough. And two,
Yeah.
don't sleep next to the oven. Have Did I
Yeah.
have to learn that the hard way, or is that common sense?
Um, I mean, it's really nice, obviously cozy and like to have a fire going all night, but I mean, there's a lot of things to unpack there, like sleeping in the cold, just that in itself is one of the most, healthy things you can do. In Sweden, we actually let our children sleep outside in the cold.
I love
And
seeing
that's
those
like in
videos. Yeah.
other countries, people don't do that, but that's actually a thing here, like sleeping outside in the cold. But yeah, I think that was um, I would, I think it was probably like intentional a little bit to be like, I'm not sleeping by the stove because I don't want to wake up and feed the fire. And like, but I'm really happy that you did because I'm sure you made everybody's trip
At least that
be a little
night.
bit nicer.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so then we woke up. It was beautiful. Snow was everywhere. And then we kept driving,
Yeah.
right?
We kept driving for another day, maybe, I don't know, 6 hours. And yeah, we had booked a cabin out in the middle of nowhere in Sweden. And yeah, and when I say in the middle of nowhere, I think most people are like, yeah, okay, like town close by, but this is like, yeah, it's off. It's like hours from anything.
Yeah.
If so, yeah. So that was pretty. And I remember it was already. pretty cold when we got there. Like it was
Yeah.
already probably minus 25, something like
Definitely
that.
minus 20, minus 25. I
Yeah.
have these distinct memories of as we were driving, just the temperature every half an hour going another degree down, another degree down, another degree down. And it's in the midwinter and we're going up north, so there's no sun really to warm us up.
Yeah. Yeah, so
So,
we had I think I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the like what it was, the Bear Soul.
sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Jump into it.
So the project was the ship was like we named Bear Soul, so partially because like bare our soul to become more open with life and to become more raw and wild, I guess is kind of the feeling. And then also Bear Soul is running barefoot. That's the most obvious one. So Bear Soul and Bear Soul. And we had an idea that we were going to actually do like a barefoot run in the cold, and we were gonna do, I think, like a half marathon was our goal.
Yeah,
And then when we showed up there in minus 25, I think everybody was like, "Ooh, this is
humbling.
already." Yeah,
Uh, it was insane. I think luckily we waited, or we maybe we didn't wait. We just kept pushing it off, but we wanted to go running, and it was the last day, and it was minus 30, minus 35. And
yeah,
I realized at that point that you can't train for that unless you have it. Like you can do your
yeah,
best to prepare yourself mentally and physically, but as the temperature gets lower and lower and lower,
yeah,
you just have to experience that. A very intense experience. But I think my favorite part to wrap up this part about the trip, the idea was to do workshops and stuff in the north of Sweden, and maybe it still happens in the future. I think you're already doing stuff like that, so we'll get into that at the end of the podcast. And my favorite part about that was that we were all together. We had this crew that was in it to win it. We would look after each other. The conditions were extreme. We had to melt our own water, and my favorite part was that we built an igloo on the ice and slept out
mm,
there. And it's just an amazing experience. And I hope that you are able to start taking people out there and building igloos and getting people out there. And then maybe we can eventually do it together again.
yes, yes,
Um, Before we get into your like what you're doing now, I really am interested because building an igloo is one form of natural building, but
mm,
something that I have been super interested about what you do is natural building. And I did renovations here in my apartment, and I remember
yeah,
talking to you about the materials and you telling me like, oh my God, what's everything that's in those materials? And then I would look it up and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is the norm of what we have
mm,
to use. Like you can't, I
mm,
mean, you can try, but in these buildings in the middle of the city, if you start mixing in, I'd love to hear your perspective on this, but mixing in natural materials and these toxic materials, it doesn't always work. Um,
yeah,
and so I went down a rabbit hole of in YouTube trying to find ways to put natural things or natural building materials into our apartment. And it was
yeah,
so difficult to do that I had to just leave it. But I did find really cool videos, and I actually have yet, other than a cob house, I think I found a cob house. But even in that cob house, there was a plastic or some sort of water barrier lining in the roof. And I wanted to ask you if there's an actual house that you can build that will last a long time, that you can live in, that's waterproof or not waterproof, but doesn't drip through or whatever, that has completely 100% natural materials.
yeah. I mean, that's really, really cool question because it brings you back to the like the foundation of for me, which is like empowerment and safety. Like when we rely on everything, all these resources and things to just work that come from the outside. We don't know anything about it. And most people don't know about their house and the structures and things that we're actually living in on a day-to-day basis, and like the food we eat and everything and all that stuff. It's easy to go crazy and nuts about this stuff, so I'm not going to go crazy. But
Feel free
yes,
to go
to make it
crazy.
short, yes, you can definitely build a house out of natural materials, and we just have to reframe how we approach life and how we approach living and building and things, because when it becomes like about an industry, then it becomes very difficult because you can't like you can't reproduce, you can't how do you say, well, it's a very different kind of labor, so it takes a certain kind of knowledge, trust, and then different type of structure. So we'd have to change kind of the way we live. But yeah, so you can
How
do, for
so?
example, instead of a plastic barrier, you could use clay. So in the past, you would actually use clay underneath your roofing and then put your roofing materials on top. And so if
Okay.
water came through, the clay would take care of the moisture that came through.
Okay.
But then you need that structure and that knowledge around that. And then, well, are very skeptical nowadays around like, well, does that actually work? But I've seen structures around the world over 1,000 years old in natural materials. So it's kind of it's kind of like, well, obviously it works.
Yeah.
It's not a question. It's just a question about like what happened? Like, where did this idea of the houses that we live in now, when did that become the norm and why? And
Yeah.
when you follow that back, you can see a trail of like basically businesses that took over and started monopolizing materials and structures. So then there would be regulations around, say in Italy, it's very popular with these tiles, right? Burnt tiles.
Yeah.
And in Italy, it's illegal now to build with natural clay because you have to buy tiles that are burnt from the industry. And so it made it illegal to use natural clay in your houses so that because it was deemed unsafe. So now we have to like actually look at that. Is that true? Like, is it true that we can't use these materials? Is it not safe? And like, like, just look at it with common sense. That's what I like to
Yeah.
share mostly. It's like, just question and reason and like what's
But
going
that's a
on here.
scary topic as well, getting into common sense nowadays. Like we're so deep into listening to what's right and what's
Yeah.
wrong that I don't even think we have common sense anymore. I think we need to experience things again, and that's why I love what you're doing.
Mm,
And I
yeah.
guess, do you have any projects you're working on right now?
I have some super exciting projects right now, and I've been working with this for over a decade, like maybe 12 years. And so I've been deep in it for a long time, and it's really been going in waves, like when things become interesting for people, and then it's like kind of dies off. And like right now, it feels like it's another like, ooh, people are like back into it, like, oh, natural building, and
Yeah,
it's amazing. And because people are also scared around what's happening, and it is a sense of security when you can do things yourself.
exactly.
So what I feel, yeah. So right now I'm building tiny houses, and what that is, it allows people to transition from the life they're living into a more simple life, so a minimalistic life.
Yeah,
And that doesn't have to be maybe for the rest of your life, but it gives you an opportunity to live in a smaller house with less money, less, you don't have to work as much, and so you don't have to take loans for doing things, and you can spend more time doing things you want, which is freedom. And that's, I guess, what I wish for everybody to have, right? It's
yeah,
freedom.
that's
So that's one
amazing.
step. And then I have this summer, I have a really big project, which is building what we call a hobbit house.
Yeah,
And that term has become really popular because of Lord of the Rings.
yeah,
And like what it is a natural building out of natural materials, from stone to wood to clay to a green roof, and putting that all those techniques. So I've traveled the world learning different techniques, which are from traditional cultures, and then putting that into a modern context for a modern lifestyle, and making it look beautiful and elegant, so that people see that, okay, this is really a real possibility for us to live like this, and it's
Yeah.
actually really beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
What does the Hobbit house look like? Is it, I mean, when I see Lord of the Rings, it looks like it's almost even built like you have maybe a little mound that you carve out from the inside. Is that
yeah.
what it is?
Well, it can be like the idea behind a natural building is that you can shape the house in every whichever form you want. And then people are like, "What? You what?" But yeah, you can build round, you can build square. A lot of modern nat eco houses are built with natural materials in a square so that people don't feel weird.
Yeah.
Um,
It's so
and but you can
crazy
build,
that we feel weird that it's not a box.
yeah,
It's like, why does it have to be? Of course, maybe like seeing the corners, you can fit everything else in
yeah,
IKEA is built to fit into the corner and not
yeah,
built to fit. So that's maybe why we think it's weird, but
yeah. I
it's,
have no issue with square buildings. I think they can be absolutely magnificent. Like
yeah.
if and especially if like in the Japanese architecture, they're built with natural materials and they make it very square and flat walls and nice, and then they incorporate like bent wood natural elements, and that's like part
Whoa.
of their. So they really enhance like the natural form and shape to make sure that people see like that's the main piece and not like yeah. But anyways, Hobbit House, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be in Swedish television as well. We're going to have be in a Swedish television program. They're going to be following the project, and you're going to have apprentices. So I have three apprentices throughout the whole year,
Wow. Yeah.
and volunteers and workshops, and yeah, it's going to be really cool.
So how do you even have time to do Arctic breath?
Mm.
Like if you have these amazing projects and building going, I feel like how do you have time to get out and go into and even take people into nature?
Yeah. Well, that is part of it. Like before, I would really separate the different topics or themes that I have and incorporate into my life. And now I'm not scared to put it all together and show that I'm not separate in these things. Like they all work together. And so, because before I think I was still trying to perform and trying to get approval by the things I was doing. And if I don't do it this way and set up my brand as one thing,
Yeah.
then then it won't work and I won't be able to run a business. So,
Yeah.
but now the more and more I lean into my gifts and just like sharing what I know and what I can share, it's just like all of it fits and it all goes together. So yeah, in the weeks I have like now I have just for locals I have once a week we do ice bathing and breath work, and I built a sauna here where I'm living now, so then I can just invite people to come to that sauna, and then I have just a few times a year, I have what I call vision quests, or or nature retreat, because the vision quest is actually like a native tradition, and I'm not I'm very inspired by them, but I'm not copying them, which is quite an
Yeah.
important
Yeah.
distinction. But that's a 5 day retreat where we go into the wilderness and you just sit without food and you drink water, but you can only sit in one spot for 4 days.
For 4 days.
Yeah,
Is
and
it also a silent retreat?
you're just by yourself, so it's solo. So then I go through some wilderness skills like how to make fires, how to collect wood, how to build shelter, and then we spend some time going through like some meditative practices and like what happens if you go crazy out there or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but then people always come out of it like, wow, like, yeah, I really managed that, and a sense of empowerment of being with themselves and also like not being scared of nature. A lot of people are scared of nature.
Yeah, I think with my introduction into the Wim Hof method and nature, I mean, I grew to find that people have separated themselves from nature, even though we are nature. They're like, I
Mm,
have to get out into nature today. And
yeah.
I'm like, just by saying that, I
See
know
that
I'm living deep in the big city. So people actually like feel that and believe that. And
concrete
we
jungle.
concrete jungle exactly. And we feel like we have to put ourselves into nature, but it wasn't until like I got into that ice cold water that I actually felt like, oh, I realized no, 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 no. We are nature. We just have to
Mm,
relearn how to live with it. And I think it's
yeah.
really cool what you're doing with the building, the breathing, the cold exposure. Um, and I mean, you changed your online presence to Arctic Breath Lofoten,
Yeah.
and was there a reason behind that? Because what was it before?
I had naturally empowered.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I kind of regret changing that at this at this time, but
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see how things evolve. I'm very open to I like the quote, you have no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. So
Uh,
it's also applies for me to business. It's easy to get stuck on like, okay, this is what I do, but it's actually what I do is what I do.
yeah.
And so that's actually what's most important. It's not, and then of course, I'm not giving anybody business advice because I'm definitely not a business. But I think attitude and showing yourself and going forward with what you love and stand for that opens up more opportunities than your brand name or whatever. So yeah,
Exactly.
I moved to Lofoten, which is the northern Arctic Norway, and I just went for it. I started, setting up workshops and retreats and did a lot of stuff and did guiding and yeah, so
So
that's where life took me. So I ended up there. Yeah.
you live there now, like full time.
No, I go in between Lofoten, where my partner is from, and then Sweden, where, yeah, my family is. So
Okay. How
yeah,
far apart are those two places?
way too far, man. Way too far. It takes about 20 hours to get up there, even from where I am.
Are you kidding me? Man,
Yeah.
I remember talking about this when we were driving up north a couple of years ago. I was like, the map that portrays Sweden is so wrong. Like
Mhm.
it does not show how long it actually is going all the way from north to south or south to north. It is
Yeah.
so long. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's beautiful, beautiful country. I envy you because of where you live, and I really hope I can get to visit very, very soon. How is what is your dog?
Envy and inspiration are very close.
Exactly. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love my life. I have a beautiful family here, and but I do love the idea of just being out there in the north and going
Yeah.
skiing. And I mean, I have
Yeah.
my paradise here. I've found my paradise here, but it seems
Yeah.
just
I see that.
yeah, yeah, it's very nice. So before we end this, it's already, I can't believe, been a
Woo.
half hour. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else that you want to share about what you're doing in the next few months? Because I'd love to hear for myself, and then I'd love to share it with the world.
Yeah, man, like just talking with you, it also brings up like so much things that it would be nice to talk about. Also, like your journey through the Wim Hof and like how it has
Yeah,
evolved and like how working with people and how it is. Because like what I see, perceive is like you found this stability in yourself in a different way, and like this, what I
yeah.
see is peace, and like,
It's
and I
almost
feel, yeah,
it's almost you, me, and Eric. Since that trip, it's been 2 or 3 years,
yeah,
and I feel like all three of us are have really found a path. And I'm gonna have Eric on tomorrow. I'm really excited about it,
nice,
and because you like exact same thing. Maybe it's age, maybe it's our maturity, but yeah, watching, I feel the same thing about you. So. I'm really
Mm.
happy for you, and I hope you, as much as I see on the internet, which isn't a lot from you, which is also nice. I wish I would see more. I hope you're as happy as you seem, and I hope that we can see each other very, very soon.
Mm. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah. Then everybody, this is Josh. He is on Instagram, Arctic Breath Lofoten. I know I'm butchering the pronunciation of that, but that's how we
perfect.
Southerners say it.
Yeah.
And I did look up your internet site. It's also Arctic Breath Lofoten, but I couldn't connect to it. So check on that so people can see it.
Yeah,
Or
so I have
may
Arctic Breath, Lofoten, and then I also have Naturbygg, which is my natural building
yeah.
side. So I have Naturbygg and Arctic Breath, Lofoten, and Joshua Roxendal. Yeah, and that's it.
Amazing, Joshua.
Woo!
Thank you so much. We did it. Have
So
an
nice.
amazing rest of your day. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next
Thank
time.
you. Mwah. Take care,
Bye.
brother.
You too.